Thank you so much, Mark. Oh, and now that we're through the legal aspect of it, that we know the recording's in progress, again, thank you very much. As Mark mentioned, my name is Sarah Robinson, and I am with Hydro Ottawa and the host for this evening's presentation. I would, while Mark thanked us, I really want to extend a sincere thank you to Mark, his executive of the Blackburn Hamlet Community Association, for having us this evening and allowing us to connect with our customers, everyone who's on the line on a very different level that we may have in the past. And of course, a grateful thank you to Councillor Dudas's office for helping to coordinate some of the logistics this evening. So Chelsea, thank you very much for that. With me this evening, we have a few experts who are going to share some important information on a number of topics. They will touch on our power outage restoration process, our tree trimming program, emergency preparedness, how to use generators safely during prolonged outages, and ways to help you stay safe and be prepared for the next storm, which is inevitable, especially during these cold winter months. We know that some of you experienced prolonged outages during the May storm and may be anxious to hear about some of the steps we have taken to build resiliency in our systems. And so you're also going to hear about some of the steps that we have taken here at Hydro Ottawa. So with that, just a few housekeeping notes before we dive in. The presentation itself, so for our presenters to go through their slides, it's going to take about 30 minutes or so. And we've got lots of time for questions at the end related to the topics that are presented in this evening's presentation. So as questions come to mind, we encourage you to submit those through the chat function. We'll monitor those throughout the course and get to those at the end of the presentation. But if you would prefer to save your question to the end, we of course invite you to come off mute and you can ask them to any one of our presenters and we can have a conversation. So with that, it is now my pleasure to be in the company of a few of the leaders of Hydro Ottawa. I'll introduce them this evening in order that they will present. So first, Mr. Joseph Muglia. He is our Director, System Operations and Grid Automation. So Joseph is responsible for the end-to-end control of the Hydro Ottawa grid, including substation maintenance and operation, system control, and metering. Joseph is going to cover the types of outages, how Hydro Ottawa is building resiliency, and share some details on our restoration process. Hydro Ottawa's safety partner, Sean Deisman, is also with us today. So Sean has been in the field of health and safety since, and I don't mean to date you here, Sean, but 1997, and is a Canadian registered safety professional since 2010. So it's only fitting that Sean is here with us this evening to talk about being prepared for anything at any time. I'm also very pleased to introduce you to Greg Tipman. Greg is Hydro Ottawa's supervisor, contractor management, and is a certified utility arborist. He oversees our forestry efforts and plays a vital role in protecting power lines and equipment from vegetation. So Greg is going to share lots of great information that you may not already know about our tree trimming program. And then I'll actually have a little bit of information to share with you in tonight's conversation about ways that we're keeping you connected. So with that, folks, let's get started. So we know that Ottawa's weather is becoming more variable and unpredictable. You know that, especially during recent events, the accumulation of snow we had over the weekend, the extreme weather that is forecasted for this upcoming weekend. And with that, climate change, we know that these trends and severe weather events will continue to happen, putting stress not only on our grid, but also on our community. And Hydro Ottawa is committed to providing the cleanest and most reliable service through every season and through every storm. So safety is, and it always will be, the core of everything we do. As your local utility provider, we are here to help you get your family, your home, your business as prepared as possible for these severe weather events with tips, tools, and resources. And so that's really what we're here to talk about this evening. We're also here to share how we at Hydro Ottawa are preparing for and recovering from these storms. And so with that, I'm going to turn it right over to our first presenter, who is Joseph.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We appreciate the opportunity to reach out to you. So I wanted to start out with the types of outages that we see here at Hydro Ottawa. We often hear from our customers, why did my power go out? And to be honest, there are many reasons why the power might be interrupted going to your house, but really I'm going to simmer it down to really four main themes as to what leads to a power outage. The first one, most obvious, is adverse weather. So adverse weather, as you know, we saw just before Christmas. Before that, we saw a major storm hit us. Probably the worst one in our history so far at the end of May. So those are examples of adverse weather that severely affect our system. Then we've got foreign interference, which is essentially contact with assets like power lines. So this can happen due to a stormy weather, or maybe a tree branch, was loose and fell on a wire that could knock out the power for sure. You may have animal contacts, like an adventurous squirrel that decides to go check out some of our infrastructure, and it leads to a power outage, up on a pole somewhere. Also, we've seen quite often, we saw in 2022, some of our infrastructure taken out due to a car crash, like a car or a work truck hits one of our poles, takes down infrastructure. So basically that happens as well. There could be a balloon, some of those Mylar balloons, the foil balloons that get up into our lines. We see that happen once in a while, where that can take out some of our power. And so, some of these events, like we've got ways of managing it. We install many animal guards across the city. We have an extensive tree trimming program that Greg's going to talk about a little bit later. So there are ways that we're dealing with these foreign interference issues that we have, but still we get them from time to time. Another reason for outages could be defective equipment. Of course, our infrastructure is aging. We're trying to replace it as quickly or more quickly than it's failing. That involves, of course, large capital investment, and it helps to keep our outages due to defective equipment in check. Finally, sometimes we experience outages because of a loss of supply, and a loss of supply is really our supply from Hydro One, our provincial supplier. They provide us power. If their power goes out, then of course our power goes out, even if we don't have a problem with our infrastructure. So that's a problem as well. There are also other utility issues that sometimes require us to turn off the power if they're doing work in very close proximity to our infrastructure. That could lead to an outage as well. So what can we do basically to help with our system being a little bit more resilient? So what we're doing is we're trying to build resiliency. In light of outages, you may say, so what is Hydro Ottawa doing for us so that we experience fewer outages? And it's a valid question, and really, so demand across our city is obviously increasing. The city is growing. As the city grows, of course, there's new infrastructure that's required. Whether the city grows sort of outwards or whether it grows up due to higher densification of housing, that all leads to increased demand on our infrastructure. So along with higher density living and workspaces comes the need to significantly increase the levels of electricity demand. How are we preparing for it as far as Hydro Ottawa goes? Well, whether the city is growing, again, upwards or sideways, Hydro Ottawa continuously works with city planners and developers in anticipation for increased electricity demands and loads. In this process, our distribution engineers must carefully balance reliability, efficiency, and innovation to provide customers with the best possible service that we can. Hydro Ottawa is committed to delivering a high level of customer service, safety, and reliability with the power that we distribute. Integral to that commitment, of course, is investment in our electricity distribution system in order to sustain existing infrastructure and to build new facilities. So we're always plagued with that, of course, needing to maintain the existing system while we expand the system, whether we're going outwards or upwards. So part of those programs could be enhancing our existing substations, building new substations, which is what we're seeing in 2023 and the next couple of years in the east. We'll be building a few more stations. And that's really to accommodate customer growth and provide sufficient capacity for emergency and peak load situations. So that's sort of how we're preparing. Another thing that we want to do is look at storm hardening as well. So Hydro Ottawa is also undertaking many storm hardening improvements to ensure that in the coming years, our infrastructure is more resistant to extreme weather events. And that, the May storm was a big learning experience for us as a company, and certainly how we look at designing our infrastructure going forward. So since the May 2022 storm, we continue to strengthen system resiliency by shortening and enhancing our tree trimming cycles, which, as I said, Greg will get into in a while. Increasing system inspections, so trying to get out there and inspecting our systems more to make sure that we know what needs to be changed or fixed. Deploying additional resources responding to power outages. So this includes not only our own internal forces, but looking at some of our utility partners that can help us with responding to the storms and when we get a large number of customers that are out of power. Leveraging technology and deploying infrared scanning to preemptively identify assets at risk of failure. So not necessarily visible to the naked eye. We have technology that we can take out, infrared cameras being one of them, where we can go out in the field, point that camera at certain devices in the field, similar to what you see in this slide here, and we can identify hotspots that could potentially be a failure point in the near future. So we're using that technology to get a better sense of what our equipment is doing and what state it's in. Finally, updating our stakeholder and crisis communications plans to adapt to more recent learnings from the storm. So getting out, similar to what we're doing tonight, but getting out and talking with our stakeholders, talking to our board of directors, that kind of thing, just letting them know basically how we're preparing for increased weather events in the future. So with that, I would like to turn it over to my colleague Sean to talk about safety. You're on mute, Sean.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry, I was on mute and talking away. Just want to reflect on the first major storm that I dealt with was back in 1998, was the ice storm, and how devastating that was. And then it just seems that the number of events are occurring faster and with fewer years between them, from the tornado to the derecho to the storm we had in December of this year, the 23rd and 24th, were major snowstorms and whiteouts. So we want to make sure everyone's going to be prepared for these events in the public, so that we want to have everyone able to stay home, hunker down, still have enough water, be able to generate lights and electricity with using the generators, and staying safe in their own homes while the emergency crews are outside doing their job. So with the emergency kits, it used to be 72-hour prepared kits. That is now just the bare minimum we have to get to. So we have to now start thinking about, well, a 7-day or 14, like a 7-day span where you have to be prepared. So when you start building these kits, it's going to be, we're not going like the doomsday preppers, but we want to be able to sustain ourselves for at least a week. So what you're going to make sure you have to get is get a flashlight, and you have your kits. And if you have a phone, your good old phone is able to have the flashlight. And the other one part is it also acts as a radio communication system for you. So you're able to get updates on the storm as long as Rogers and TELUS stay alert to that and they don't go down themselves. But we also want to make sure you're having enough canned food and fruits and stuff so that you're able to sustain and be able to feed your families and such. Have a first aid kit there. We also want to make sure that you have enough batteries. If you don't have a cell phone, that you have batteries that can run the flashlight. Or one of the things that's very helpful to myself is this, it's a power pack that it's charge it up and it's good. And last time I went on vacation with it, it ran 5 cell phones, charged 5 cell phones for a week down south. So it's a very powerful little unit, but you can just charge it up, keep it there. So if you do need it, you can plug your cell phone in and it'll run that. We want to make sure you have enough water. So when you get into the bottled water, you have to think that you have to have at least 4 liters per person per day. So if you have a family of 5 like I do, that's 20 liters. If it's going for the 7 week, you're going to have about 140 liters of water on hand. So Costco may get, where you might want to, sorry, I shouldn't say, but that big box store with the big parking spaces is where you should go get your water. And just make sure you have enough for it all to sustain that. Make sure you have proper toiletries and so forth. And don't want to get the hoarding of the toilet paper again, but have enough on hand for that. Hydro Ottawa does have, or will be having the little kits and lists of emergency prepared kits on their website very shortly. I think they're coming up within the next week or so. They're working hard to get it, very diligently to get it up there, but it goes over. You should also have money so that when you go, because if everything's down, people need to buy stuff. So make sure you have a supply of money. It just that, in your pocket, change, whatever, just so you're able to buy other food. If the internet's down, you can't use your Interact. Hard cash is good to have on hand. What else is there? Yeah, we'll go to the next slide there, Sarah. And now we're going to talk about generators. Everyone, Home Depot has tons of generators on staff or on site. I was at Lowe's and I was at Rona, so I'm getting everyone there. And even Costco does have all these on site. You've got to make sure when you pick the generator that it's one that's meant for you, that's to be able to sustain your major appliances like your fridge, your freezers, and maybe some lights, and that it's large enough to sustain your load that's going to go on to the generator. You don't want to keep tripping the generator. You got to choose it for the specific household you have. Try not to use the ones from work sites because they're quite powerful. They can get up to larger voltages that may surge on you and damage some of your equipment. Generators are sized before running the generator. Make sure you find a good place to put the generator. As from the ice storm and some other natural situations we've had, people have ran propane tanks and propane barbecues inside and generators inside, which also generates carbon monoxide, which is the silent killer. No taste, no smell. So you won't know that you're actually being exposed to carbon monoxide as you're running the generator inside. So make sure you have a good, well-ventilated area that's able to vent out that. And one of the things that came from the last time we did this is you should read your operator's manual for the maintenance schedule when you should run this. It's on average, it should be ran once a month to make sure that it's still operating. Put a couple of lights onto it so it does run on a charge, so that's going to be operating when you do need it. So it just doesn't sit there from the last ice storm from 98 and you hope that it works 30 years later. We have to make sure you do your regular maintenance on it. So the best thing is to keep that operator's manual and actually read it. Like my video or my VCR used to flash 12 because I never used to read the thing. I now do read all my instruction manuals because I want to make sure everything's going to work while I'm there. So those are some of the tips we have for generators. I think we're back over to you now, Joseph.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So Sarah mentioned at the beginning of this slide deck that, the area that I work in and that's part of it is the power restoration process. So within my system operations group, We really oversee the restoration of power, and I got to say it's sort of near and dear to my heart. So wanted to talk a little bit about that process, which I find extremely interesting. So during a major storm event or any sort of outage event, after the storm has passed, and once it's safe to do so, we need to investigate, of course, the extent of the damage across the city or across the area that's been worst hit, and evaluate the resources required before any restoration can take place. This is called the damage assessment phase of the restoration. And depending on the damage, it could take up to several days. It could take from minutes or hours all the way up to several days to properly assess the damage and make sure we understand what's required from us from a resource and materials perspective. Our electrical system is incredibly integrated and complex, with profound destruction and obstacles in and around neighborhoods and homes. Our ability to assess and come up with safe restoration plans takes time to ensure that the safety of our crews and the public is kept, at highest standard. We prioritize repairs that pose serious safety hazards and restore power to critical infrastructure, such as emergency services, hospitals, water and sewage treatment plants, schools, and larger neighborhoods of customers first. And then from there, we systematically look to restore. We move on to repairing lines that are serving the largest number of customers until we get down to those individual customers in the restoration process. Generally, our crews work around the clock. Most of the restoration efforts get done during the day. That's the safest time by far to do so. We can see where the infrastructure is, particularly if there's lines on the ground, live wires on the ground. We'd prefer to do that work, of course, when there's daylight, but the restoration effort continues 24 hours until it's done. In some instances, customer-owned electrical equipment can also be damaged, of course. We saw that a lot in some of the outage areas during the big May storm. Pine Glen, I know I drove through Pine Glen. It was horrible, the destruction that took place there, with massive trees that were toppled over like nothing. A lot of those trees ended up on top of our infrastructure. And of course, those trees have to be removed before we can get at our infrastructure and put it back together. So it gets extremely complicated. Some of the restoration efforts can get extremely complicated and time consuming. If the storm has caused damage to a home's electrical system, usually, well, not usually, always, the customer would have to do the repair to their owned equipment first before Hydro Ottawa is able to restore the power. That also involves an ESA inspection from the Electrical Safety Authority. And so all of that sort of needs to take place if the infrastructure owned by the homeowner is damaged, and then we're able to restore power to that residence. Yeah, so my advice, strongly advise that if there is ever, if anyone is ever experiencing any damage to the electrical infrastructure that's going to their house, please stay back. Don't attempt to do any sort of, repair or restoration work or even tree clearing until we are able to get there and assess the situation. It could be extremely dangerous. We certainly don't want anyone taking that kind of work on. So, if that ever happens, please just let us know. Give us a call. We'll be over as soon as we can, and we'll make sure that things are done safely. So that's about all I wanted to say about restoration. I wanted to hand it over to Greg Tipman, who's got a lot of really interesting information on the tree trimming program.
Right. Thanks, Joseph, and welcome everybody. So just to kind of give you a broad overview of what Hydro Ottawa's forestry or veg management program is like on a year-to-year basis. We trim approximately about 60,000 trees per year. We work year-round, even in this minus 20 type weather we're having right now. It's part of our regular maintenance program. and we're looking, to mitigate any tree contacts with overhead power lines that can cause fires, equipment damage, or cause power outages. Essentially, is what we're looking to mitigate. Responsibility. Who is responsible for veg maintenance or vegetation communications, if you will? So basically, it's everybody's responsibility. Keeping a close eye on the trees and vegetation comes down, to Hydro Ottawa's responsibility. We want to ensure that we're providing a reliable service to you, our customers. So we have our forestry inspectors. They will head out, monitor. They'll gather the data about the trees in proximity to the overhead wires. We'll go out on a scheduled basis. Like I said, we trim yearly, but certain grids are done in different quarters throughout the year. So they'll kind of do it step by step for each veg management unit. We end up trimming any trees that are in direct contact with the power lines or within approximately 3 meters of a power line. As you, the resident, you're responsible to monitor your service wire if you have an overhead service wire that feeds directly to your home. So basically from pole to house is your responsibility for vegetation. If you do have vegetation around your service wire, Hydro Ottawa can arrange to have your power shut off. It doesn't cost you anything. You get one free disconnect a year for any tree trimming on your property, basically to ensure you have a safe working environment for you or a private contractor, for example, if you're going to hire somebody to do the work. If you do notice a tree near an overhead power line or need a temporary outage to trim your service wire, we do ask that you submit a non-electrical service request online or contact us by phone. And it's easy enough to set up either a forestry inspector to come out and assure yes or no if tree trimming needs to be done, or to have a service layout agent come out and set up your disconnect. Getting on to our next point on trimming zones. So basically, like I was pointing to earlier, we're out there trimming yearly. Some veg management units are trimmed on 2 years versus 3 years. We're basically looking to go and get the balanced effects of a healthy tree while maintaining the proper proximity clearances from our overhead wires. And that's basically to ensure that public safety and the electrical supply reliability of our territories is upheld. And it's basically done throughout the year. All crews involved in this tree trimming, we contract everything out. They do follow our industry best practices, which is brought up through the ISA, which is the International Society of Arboriculture. They receive extensive training prior to doing the actual work. So they have to meet a bunch of benchmarks and courses and qualifications, which is constantly updated, also on electrical awareness. Our tree trimming crews, they're trained to, like I said, proper pruning techniques. So directionally pruning the tree away, as long as we can maintain the tree, keep it. By all means, if we can train it to grow away from the hydro wires, all the better. And basically while attempting to protect the health of the tree is kind of essential. So in regards to Blackburn Hamlet, your hamlet is basically divided. You're at the border of 2 of our veg management units, and they're both on 3-year cycle trims. The boundary road is Innis Road. North is one section, and that's being trimmed in Q1 of this year. Our crews are up in the north end of Montreal Road right now, so they'll be working their way down. And then on the south side of Innis Road is another veg management unit. It's also on a 3-year cycle trim, and it's being trimmed in Q1 of the next year, 2024. So basically, the last little step here, guys, is how can you help? Because saying if you see anything, if you see vegetation near a wire and you're not sure, obviously don't go near it. Put in a call or put in an email, online request, and one of our forestry inspectors will get out there and get eyes on it, and they'll be able to work with you, whether it's pole to pole trimming or on your service wire, to give you kind of the best direction of how to proceed. But more eyes are better than one. And if you, the public, you see a tree concern near high voltage wires and you're not sure, better safe than sorry, put a call in, and our experts will get out there and work on a game plan to make sure everything's hunky-dory. And with that, I think we're over on to Sarah.
Great, thank you, Greg. So folks, one thing I noted when Sean was encouraging everyone to have a minimum of 72-hour supply on hand, including non-perishable foods that generally come in a can, he forgot to mention that you're going to want a manual can opener as well to open that food. So on a more serious note, folks, we know that power outages can be a major inconvenience. And while we're employees of Hydro Ottawa, we're not immune to these outages either, as they do influence our everyday lives. And so it doesn't matter whether it's a destructive weather event or, as Joseph mentioned, a pesky squirrel who has interfered with the lines. We know that these outages really can cause disruption. And so with that, our teams are on here within our office, within our service territory, on the roads, in our stations, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And since May, we've dedicated even more time and resources to help with the restoration efforts, as well as improve communication and transparency with you. Excuse me. So here are a few ways that we're keeping you informed. You can see the list here. So first, hydroottawa.com, our website. It is a library of information. So whether you are looking for tips on conservation, where to find the time that your power is going to be restored, or if you're very focused on environmental issues and want to know what we're doing to align to net zero objectives that the city, province, and nation have set forth, you can find that information on our website. So again, a very, very valuable tool. And especially when it comes to storms, it's been designed to get you the information you need at your fingertips. So from the main page of our website, you can find an emergency preparedness and outage section right when you land on our page. And so, pre-storm, there's a quick link there where you can, Sean mentioned, we're going to have even more tips around emergency preparedness and some activities that you, as either a family, as an individual, or a business should do to prepare, and with lots of information. And then when a major event is activated, and if any of you did visit the website during the Christmas storm, you may have seen a different look and feel to the main page of our website. So one of the things that we have done since May and learned is that we have a new web page that has been launched, again, to give you that quick access to information that you may need. So there you're going to be able to find our outage map, or a quick link to the outage map to find out when, the impact the outage is having on your community. And the map updates, just so everybody knows, every 15 minutes as information is fed in. And it gives that information when an outage is affecting 10 or more customers within a 200-meter radius of each other. And so for safety reasons, if the outage is less than 10 people, we don't display that information. And so that's why sometimes you may visit the site and your power is out, but it's not reflecting on the outage map. That could be the reason why right there. And so again, you can quickly sort of zoom in, get more details. When it's safe for our crews, when they're in the field to do so, when they've identified the cause of the outage and know just how long it's going to take to restore your power, they're going to update that information in the systems. And that's where the 15-minute refresh comes in. So again, when it's safe, they'll do that, and then you should have a better idea of just when your power is going to be restored. And again, That new site, it's going to replace the homepage, but you're still able to access all of the information on our website. So that critical storm center, and again, major events are determined, we look at a number of factors that, sort of the criteria that determine a major event on when that will be activated. But again, you can still go to the entire site, even when the storm page is live, if you're looking for additional information. And so connecting with us, we want to make sure that you're able to connect with us in a variety of ways. And this is where, Greg talked about customer responsibility when it comes to tree trimming. We also ask that you have some responsibility when it comes to ensuring that we have the right contact information for you as well. So if folks don't already know, we have an online tool as well as an app, and it's called My Account. And it is for residential or small commercial and large commercial customers. And within this tool, what you're able to do is look at things like view and manage your electricity energy usage. If that's something that interests you, again, from that conservation perspective, when are the peak times that you're using electricity within your home? You can manage your payment options within My Account. You can report an outage as well through the tool. So there's a few different ways that you're able to connect with us in. And then if you do need to do any upgrades, electrical upgrades to your home, or maybe you're have found a new home that you're moving into, you can also submit those types of service requests as well. So where your responsibility comes in, if we don't have the right contact information for you, including your telephone number and email, we can't reach you in the events of either planned or unplanned outages. And that's where it's really important to be able to connect one-on-one. So you're able to do all of this online if you like, or if you need assistance, you can also call our customer service team, who would be more than happy to help you update your account information as well. So you might be wondering, I don't want to be spammed by Hydro Ottawa. So what types of things do you reach out to me for? So we're only going to send a notification to you and use this contact information when there's a power outage or interruption that is scheduled for your service address. And so it really is for informational purposes only. You do have an opt-in option. We send out a monthly newsletter to our customers. Again, when I talked about that library of information on our website, when new blogs are written or we have new information to share, we do distribute it first through our customer newsletter. And so you can get those up-to-date insights at your fingertips as well. And then a new feature that we've also been testing recently are weather alerts. And so this email notification process that again, we're still in a pilot phase, is that when we are aware of a possible event that poses a threat to our power system, we want to make sure that you know about it as well. And so if we have your email on file, then that's how you'll be notified. Again, information we have, we really want to make sure that we share that with you as well. And so these notifications are just an additional touch point between Hydro Ottawa and our customers in helping you stay informed of the weather patterns and of course, outage safety. And so that is everything from a formal presentation perspective. So we're going to start to take some questions. I did see them coming through the chat already. But we also, again, as mentioned earlier in the presentation, when we kick things off, that if you'd like to have a conversation with us, we can also take your questions live. What we do ask is that they remain sort of focused on the information that's been presented today, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you with other questions. So you can see at the bottom of this slide right here. cr@hydroottawa.com is the email address. I am on the other end of that email address. And so anything that you would like to know, please feel free to reach out by those means, and we will absolutely get back to you. I do see as an example around the infrastructure renewal project that's happening in the neighborhood. And of course, we'll be sharing more information on that through other channels as well. But as I mentioned, we're going to kick things off, and I'm going to kick this first question over to Sean, if you don't mind. And so, Sean, when you were talking about generator safety, we had a question come in around a dedicated plug for someone's generator. And so does someone need any type of special permission to install that plug directly into their panel? Or what would be the process if they'd like a dedicated circuit?
To put an inline, you'll have to get an electrician to come in and check to see if your panel's able to hold that and be able to secure it in. So it's up to the electrician to see if your panel can handle that. So I'm not an electrician, and I'm not going to step on their toes. They'll come in. So you'll probably have to hire to do an inline. But I know some of our farmers and rural customers do have inline generators. So the power goes down, just like we have at our own facility to keep our system office up. Power goes down, it generates right back up, and there's hardly a heartbeat of lost time or power. But the problem is, like the person, whoever gave that question, Adam, you're quite right that the power, if you do have an inline generator, when we start doing the restoration, you will be putting backfeed onto our line, which then can cause an electrocution to our power line technicians. So we have our power line technicians will do a amp check to see if there's any potential out there. That's part of our work protection code that we get trained on a 3-year basis. So we will do our checks to make sure there's no backfeed from an inline generator. But again, just talk to your local electrician. If you have your own, like, go to the I guess I was not going to say Yellow Pages, but those no longer exist. Go do the Google search and you'll be able to locate a good electrician.
Yeah, so that was my question. I just wanted to know whether it was prohibited or not. I know, I have to get an electrician involved, and I was planning on having kind of a lockout switch too, so that I can only have one side of it powered at a time, to shut off the mains breaker while my generator's in play. So that's good to know that it's not just outright prohibited. As long as I do it properly, then I'll be good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for that, Adam. Greg, a question for you around tree trimming and some of the activities that you mentioned that might be happening in Q1 this year. Will there be any power outages required as part of this work? And if so, how will customers be notified?
So if there's any trees that do require a power outage, our contractor sends the request to me, essentially. I then send out one of my forestry inspectors to verify that, yes, a power outage is needed. If it is needed, basically the wheels start moving, the planning begins. I will go out and pick a day. Any customer that will be affected by the power outage will be notified a minimum of 5 business days before the outage happens. It'll be given a start time and an end time, and that notification will go out from our service department either via phone or email, and that's all based on the individual's best contact information. So if you guys haven't in a while, just make sure Hydro Ottawa has your best contact information, because sometimes people move, they forget to update it, and we notify the civic number, but that resident is no longer there, and they never get notified, or the new person doesn't get notified and whatnot. So yeah, notifications go out approximately 5 business days before a planned power outage occurs.
And that's actually a great segue, Greg. Thank you for that, into some of the questions around the infrastructure renewal that's taking place in Blackburn Hamlet right now that Hydro Ottawa is completing, and future outages. And so we will have further correspondence, I do know, going out to residents with an update on the cable replacement project. And if residents are impacted by some future outages, as Greg mentioned, for the tree trimming, it's the very same process for this type of work as well. So similar to the means by which you receive the original notifications for the project notification that was taking place, you'll receive updates by mail, so hard copy letter delivered, as well as notices posted to your website or to the website, and then something that, you know, it's some internal lingo with the auto dialer, so you'll either receive a text, a phone call, or an email letting you know that your power is going to be out, the duration of that outage, and the contact information of the project manager should you have any follow-up questions. So again, a very, very similar process to what Greg just described as well. Joseph, while we have some more questions coming in, and again, if anybody would like to pose theirs live to us, you're more than welcome to. Maybe we could tackle one of the most common questions we get at Hydro Ottawa, and that is, how is it possible that my neighbor has power but mine is out?
Yeah, unfortunately, we see this often, and it's just, it could be as simple as two circuits running down the same street that feed maybe opposite sides of the street. We have that commonly in some of the designs that we did, particularly legacy designs. There could also be circuits that come onto a street and dead end, and another circuit picks up the other customers where that circuit left off. Again, legacy designs, we're trying to change some of the way we design now so that we don't get into those situations. But there's often redundancy but redundancy reasons why that could happen as well. So number of different reasons why that, you know, you may be out of power and your next door neighbor or the neighbor across the street has lights on still. Hopefully you're the one that has the power on still.
Great, thank you. Lynn, I do want to acknowledge your question around EV, you know, building capacity for EV infrastructure and heat pumps. We don't have the right experts in this area, in this field on the call with us right now. But again, we will get the information to you. So if you want to email me at cr@hydroottawa.com, we'll be sure to facilitate that and provide more information. And around keeping the community association informed of work, by absolutely all means, we will definitely strive to ensure that you know, Mark and your executive are kept informed of those you know, either projects or when outages are good, planned outages are going to impact your community as well. So we'll make note of that.
I've got a question from the community association. Just in regards to the most recent storms that we had, and you know, once in a lifetime storms seem to be happening more often. Not just once in a lifetime, unfortunately, but the storm in the summer, the Derico, the community association and the community had a very difficult time in navigating that. And, you know, whether it was information, letting people know when to expect power to return, how to help our residents navigate it. I know you spoke to information packages that you're preparing and you're going to be sending out, but is there anything else that that you recommend or that you're developing for residents and users to help navigate those prolonged outages? You know, sometimes a lot of our residents may not have access to the internet, or they may just not have, you know, a cell phone that connects, or that they're, you know, tech savvy, so they may not be able to access the website to get those updates on power outages and how they're going. And you know, there's ample concerns within the community during that Derico and the subsequent cleanup. So, you know, any additional resources, any additional suggestions that you might have? I know we as a community association struggled. Lynn, I think, set up in our hall with millions of power bars to keep us going, but we're sort of at a loss on how to navigate that as a group.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, Mark, and one that we're all still trying to navigate as well, right? There's no question that these extreme weather events are happening more frequently. And so just like today's session has been designed to help open, you know, make it more of a conversation and less transactional. We want to keep the conversation going. And so other ways that we're looking, you know, we heard that sometimes going back to sort of traditional media as well to keep stakeholders and our customers informed is a great option. We are collaborating more with the City of Ottawa as well. So not just on, you know, Joseph is part of the emergency preparedness team when they're activated. We are doing more on the communication side as well. And so that's the area or the function that I sit in within Hydro Ottawa, and so can speak very confidently how we are opening those lines. Another example, during the last storm, I was also very closely aligned with the Ottawa Police and their communications team. And so again, it was another vehicle that we were able to share information. So we very much recognize the importance of getting the information out, not just through our traditional channels, or maybe looking at, you know, what have been considered traditional channels, while adopting or continuing with the online sort of presence that we've had as well. And I would encourage, you know, as an association, you know, we need to hear from you as well. So, you know, what if you do have if you have specific ideas as well, please feel free to feed those in. You know, I think it, again, moving from that transactional and making this more of a conversation, hearing from people on what their needs are is only going to strengthen our plans in the future. Joseph, as part of sort of the emergency preparedness, did you have anything to add from either a citywide perspective or an incident command center perspective?
So whenever there's a large scale event, particularly if it expands beyond just electrical infrastructure, although we take that obviously to heart. I mean, that's our first plan, is to restore power across the city. But what we saw with the derecho, for instance, was it was such a concerted effort with you know, with dealing with the city and how we carried out our restoration plans. We worked very closely with the city and the Ottawa Police to escort our equipment and materials and contractors around the city into, you know, streets that were closed off to the public, so that we could get in there and restore and build pole lines back up. So that takes heavy coordination. I know that Yan on the call was involved. He was our EOC representative during the derecho, which provided a lot of back and forth information from the city to us and back. So that was incredibly helpful. But then logistically and internally within Hydro Ottawa, What happens during one of those events, particularly the size of the derecho and the fact that, you know, over half of our service territory was taken out in 15 minutes, basically, by that storm. There was tons of coordination and most of our staff doing their day-to-day jobs, flipping over and doing work and coordination and efforts completely unrelated to what they do on a daily basis. Our HR department, for instance, switched over to logistics so that they could supply our contractors and our literally hundreds of staff in the field, both internal and external staff in the field with the supplies that they needed so that they could keep going on, 16-hour-long days in some situations, so that we could get the power back on. So very, very, again, very complex, but working with the city and working with other departments across the city certainly helped our restoration effort.
Joseph, maybe you could just touch on how we prioritize when there has been significant damage, what areas or services that our crews tackle first.
So I guess to people that have their power out, they always feel like they're last, right? But really what we do in such a large scale outage such as that, or even during the tornadoes in 2018, we are really looking at the infrastructure, this is why it's so critical that we do the damage assessment before we start anything, because we could send a crew out to a neighborhood to restore a small pocket of customers that may be out. A neighboring area right beside that subdivision or that neighborhood could have, tens of thousands of customers out compared to what we just restored. So it's best that we have that overall view of what we're dealing with first. So then we can start prioritizing, okay, where are the key areas that we want to bring up first? And I think I mentioned in one of our slides was like the sewage treatment plants for those folks that are not on, those folks that would be affected by supply of water or sewage treatment, that kind of thing. Hospitals, elderly care facilities, places like that, schools. We really look at those areas that could potentially not be serving the rest of the community if they're not up and have their power as quickly as possible. And then we'll look at those areas where we can bring on the most customers, basically the biggest bang for the buck, where we can bring up the most customers with the least amount of work at the onset. Then we also look at what areas can we restore so that we can restore other areas that connect to those areas that we just brought up. So it's a very tricky and complex, restoration plan that we have to develop, and it has to be done quickly. As I mentioned earlier, it could take hours, it could take days before we get that whole picture together. We usually don't wait until we have the entire damage assessment complete. We will start doing some localized restoration where we can and where it's safe, of course. But really that's how it gets done. We look for the biggest areas that we can bring up, and those areas that are impactful for the community at large that have power, so the hospitals, that kind of thing. And we sort of work our way until we get to individual customers.
And I think you mentioned a really important part, and that is around safety. And so that is obviously one of the fundamental guiding principles that Hydro Ottawa operates within. And so safety of our crew, safety of our community, safety of our customers. And so as we do look at the restoration process, and not just restoration, but in everything we do, that health and safety feature, and really, Sean talked about it quite a bit, is sort of our North Star that guides us through our work. And so we will never compromise that to restore power. So folks, I don't see any other questions at this time. So if it's all right with everyone, we'll close off the session. You have our email address though, so please, if anything comes to mind afterwards, do not hesitate to reach out. Keep that email address on hand and we'll be sure to get back to you. Mark, to you and your executive and Councillor Dudah's office for helping to facilitate on behalf of Hydro Ottawa. We thank you so much for inviting us into your community today.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for the presentation, and to your entire team. Very knowledgeable and very helpful information that you provided. Really appreciate you guys taking the time this evening to provide this update. The Community Association will continue to share information as we receive it. We often try to update the community whenever we receive updates from Hydro Ottawa, and we'll continue to do so, and we'll keep the lines of communication open so that when the information becomes available or changes are put in place or emergency preparedness documents are released, we'll share it on behalf in the community to get that message out.
Great. And that is actually that. Thank you for reminding me, Mark. We will send those links over just as soon as they're available. So they're structured by small business, by rural customers, by urban customers. And so I think everyone will find them very, very helpful as to help you prepare for the next storm and go through the checklist and the type of information that you should have on hand. So we'll be sure to send that over. Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening, and we do look forward to connecting again soon. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.